lot of the crawler evidence actually self-destructs, but not deliberately. I just don't think the matter can stay here intact. I mean, laws of conservation, if you come across weird, I don't think the matter can hold itself together after it ceases functioning. But I do know the fact that anybody who gets a hold of crawlers usually loses the body within 12 to 72 hours.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that it essentially just evaporates? Like it just it deconstructs as in it disappears?
It just sublimates.
So that was a clip from a conversation you're about to hear between myself and the insider former private contractor that I've been in touch with. We're going to call him Knox. You'll hear more from him in a minute, but just a brief background. Knox was part of a team that would go out and recover rare earth elements from different locations around the world. Rare earth elements have properties like fluorescence, magnetism, some are even conductive. Knox told me that we're actually more dependent on REEs than we are oil. They're used in all sorts of technologies like our cell phones, computers. The applications are numerous. Now, because Knox was out doing what he did, he and his team would often encounter OTNs, what we call cryptids. These specialized teams refer to as OTNs, short for other than normal. Knox has expressed that there's a high incidence of other than normal entities in areas that have a high concentration of rare earth elements. So in this conversation, you'll get to hear him explain the cloaking abilities they possess. He goes into great detail about the biology and specialized cells that allow for cloaking. Then we get into portals. There's also a higher instance of portals in areas that have high concentrations of rare earth. Knox has identified 2 types, and he discusses both of those in depth. Now, a couple of words on credibility. The reasons I believe Knox is credible: 1, I've had one of his stories looked into by someone who would have been working in the same area that Knox spoke of, and this someone is a miner. So for months, this miner friend of mine has tried to disprove Knox's story, which would have taken place at a diamond mine. And he recently reported back to me that the higher he took the questions, the more vague the responses. He said it was like nobody really wanted to offer an explanation or give an answer. So that's interesting. I'm not saying it means anything. I'm just saying that's interesting. Another reason I believe him is because I have come to know him really well over the past few months. He's the most accurately intuitive person I've ever met in my life, but he shares such detailed information. It would be nearly impossible to be lying about it all while maintaining such consistency between conversations. Liars don't like details. It's too much to remember to keep up the lie. Liars are vague. This guy is very particular. He's detailed. He's intentional. If I didn't believe he was credible, we wouldn't be here right now. He would like to keep aspects of his past in the past, and I'm fiercely protective of his identity and respectful of his choice to remain anonymous. I really need y'all to respect that as well. And if you don't want to, that's fine. Just don't litter in my comment section. Questions are fine. Debate is encouraged. But if you don't really care, if you just want to argue, please quietly exit your seat and make your way to the back door, and one of those nice men will give you directions to Reddit. If you've been with me for a while, you know how I work. Due diligence is an understatement. Look around you. Do you see any stones left unturned? No, you do not, because it's me, and I investigate everything to the depths. So if you trust me, trust that I know what I'm talking about when I say Knox is the real deal. Honestly, though, this isn't about convincing anyone. We aren't trying to convert you into believers. There's really nothing to believe in. Knox is simply expressing that he has had some unique experiences and had the opportunity to observe things that we all wonder about. We aren't claiming this information is complete or that there aren't aspects of it that could be expanded on. This is just one man's perspective based on his observations. We're just putting this information out into the world and hoping that anyone else who holds a piece of this puzzle may come forward and help us start to form a clear picture of what in the high strangeness is going on. All right, here we go.
Okay, so what do you do and how did you get into cryptids?
They're kind of all around us growing up in rumors and all sorts of different tales and stories. We had ones called shimmers, which were the ones that looked like heat waves, and you had the other ones that were the corpse walkers. I think people call crawlers or rakes nowadays, but they just called them corpse walkers, climb up trees and all sorts of crazy stuff. Not much encounter in my life at that point. I moved up to in 82 when my dad got out of the DOD. When I turned 17, I went down to got myself a job and bouncing up on the hill, and I kept a guy from getting beaten down pretty hard, and it turned out he ran a contracting group and kind of joined up from there once they found out my background. And so I did mostly geology, and I'm an SEC at that time, which is a specialist combat contractor. You know, we don't run out there and start wars. Most of the time they want us there for people that can hold their own in a fight and have a PhD on site. So we're a bit different than most of them. I had a good background as a federal locksmith bonding. Mostly mine was geology, and so there are not many locksmiths in the field, so I even had quite a few helicopters show up with different items to open up non-destructively, so that was always funny and extra money. But I'm not really a cryptid hunter or specialist, I just have encountered them. During the 20 years I did that from 18 to 38, I had 17 major contact events with OTNs, or other than normal encounters.
They're called other than normals, OTN?
OTNs or HTKs, and they classify what you're talking about as a beta delta. Beta means bipedal, delta means quadrupedal. They have a whole Hollywood alphabet acronym system for them.
I'm really super interested in what you know about crawlers, or what did you call them?
Oh, we call them pull-offs because they just pull a person off. They disappear.
Okay, that's what I call a crawler. What I saw in the road that I likened to that trail cam image, you would call them a pull-off?
Oh, those I'd actually call crawlers right there. The pull-off is that drawing I sent to you. They tend to be very big and very rarely seen. They're too highly successful, but they're also pretty big. Crawler's actually pretty small compared to them.
A pull-off, okay. Do you think that a pull-off has a cloaking ability?
Yes, they have a combination of chromatophores and photophores, which are cells that can change color. The light-emitting cells are situated underneath the base of a hollow hair in construction similar to that of a polar bear. So, and very fine level. Also, the skin is deformable and colorable in texture, very similar to a mimic octopus, if it's the closest analogy I can see or convey. But the ability to have basically bioorganic LED with the photophore and a small fiber optic pipe hair, they can actually project the area behind them with light. They just imitate the light on one side. They can actually edit and copy anything around them. And a lot of people would think that's impossible, but that's also linked to the photophores in the eyes. And even other animals have demonstrated the ability to use photophores and chromatophores in complete darkness with no context and match their surrounding environment.
That's true, yeah.
It's genius to put a high gain pass filter over the eyes. Good move on your part.
Thank you. You know, some people told me, "Oh, that's just a artifact," and I said, "Well, that could be true." But I whited out my own eyeballs, and I tried the same thing, and I did not get the same result.
Well, they do have photophores inward facing in the eyes as well, which causes the eye glow, and that seems counterintuitive that light like that would actually blind if put into the eye. But this is used in the hatchet fish and a couple other fishes where it helps them prime and match the surroundings around them. How that works is their eyes are abnormally sensitive, so even moonlight would be like looking through a night vision into a halogen light. So they can prime the eye and retune the eye down so they can actually handle different light environments because they are mostly dark operational, so even moonlight's going to be really bright. So that's how they quickly adjust their eyes.
So you think my assessment with the high pass filter was accurate?
Yeah, really good. That halo artifact everybody said was the JPEGing thing is actually ambient emission from the photophores. It just happens to, it's hitting off the, tapederm in the back and just coming out. Get a flare artifact in a halo.
Right. I mean, that could have been a number of things too. Sometimes when that creature is so pale, sometimes when the camera is having trouble adjusting to the variance between the light and dark, it'll create something like that because there was an area under that deer's chin, although it wasn't as pronounced. But that to me was the weakest argument for it being fake.
One of the interesting things I found about that was the problem the camera was having with washout L beta would be a similar problem that creature would be having if it didn't have the ability to adjust its eyes quickly. So it's very interesting that mechanism is reflected.
Yeah. I've seen some videos that I believe to be authentic, and it appears as if their eyes emit light even when the light source is removed from them. So I don't know if that's that imitation you're talking about, or if they're...
No, that's just them keeping the eyes primed for the light level. It will seeing, and it's incredibly bright light levels of light for them. So to take care of that, they adjust internally. And also that allows them, once they get a color match or a shade match when the light gets dim enough for them that they can actually be comfortable. It also is helping the neurological system adjust the photophores across the body to the light contrast around it. So it's a way to help the eyes as well as neurologically stimulate and help modulate the different photophores to allow matching camera.
Where do you think these creatures live? Are they in caves?
Likely, but it's also possible that they just kind of happen to fall in here from something sihedral.
What is, I don't know what that word means. Forgive me.
Just coming in, manifesting, or actually coming in dimensionally.
Okay,
they're often associated with shimmer. There's the difference between a rift and a shimmer is that a shimmer is place to place here, where a rift would be to another place completely. And rifts are usually accompanied by huge weather events or dramatic weather changes, because you have an issue if you open up a hole to another place that has a different atmosphere, pressure, density, and moisture at the bottom of our atmospheric well on the ground. You're going to have a really big mix of two different pressure systems, atmosphere types, all sorts of moisture. And so usually if there's a rift, then you're going to get a big storm. Whereas a shimmer is just a place to place, so you won't have that effect as much.
I believe that I saw one of those in Colorado on a ski trip. My friend and I heard this loud vibration sound, and then all of a sudden this jelly-looking, shimmer structure just appeared in front of us. She puts her finger up to it, and it disappears up to her knuckle. Like, it went through, and everybody says it's a portal. And I'm like, well, is it a portal, or is it a high-tech capture device?
It's a shimmer, which is a place-to-place manifestation. Whether they're used for transport or just happen and stuff comes through them, or that's how they get around, I have no idea. Shimmer would be place-to-place on Earth. A rift would be to a dimension or a sihedral place.
You have, in this conversation, just in this, how long have we been on the phone? 16 minutes. You have explained so much about missing 411.
Oh, yeah. Those things have electrocyte bundles along their back, which is they use sodium channel ions to actually produce electrical, very similar to an eel or a catfish, and stun prey. I believe most of them will attack the nape of the neck, cervical vertebra area that would instantly paralyze, immobilize, and you can't even talk or move if the right voltage is going in there. That's why they're called pull-offs. And I've seen people, I've not participated in it, but I've seen equipment that people have used, rubberized neck protectors, basically rubberized canvas hanging out of the helmet to protect the nape of the neck. So obviously that is something that is known.
What does a pull-off look like? Like, you said they're bigger than crawlers.
That picture I sent you, that's just in its bipedal mode, but pull-offs have more of a hoof-like structure, 3 phalanges going out to this weird hoof-like structure, and the crawlers seem to have more of the typical razor nail sort of thing that everyone seems to associate with them.
I don't know if that thing was messing with my mind, but it was like a glitch in my brain, and then I have no memory of driving off. It was wild.
Well, that's been reported a lot, but
yeah,
that could be a trauma response or actually a phenomena with them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
And you had no context for it.
Yeah, I didn't. It's interesting to me, when we don't have any context, when there's nothing in our database, the mind starts to build from memory, right? For crawlers, people describe them so consistently.
Have no contextual bias or confirmation bias.
Exactly.
Xenic or alien.
Yes. So have you ever been on any kind of mission where you had to deal with crawlers?
Yes, once. And at this point, I can't talk about that.
Okay, that's fine.
We did deal with it successfully. And they don't like fire. Fire screws up almost everything they have. And they're really vulnerable to bismuth ammo. For some reason, bismuth ammo is diamagnetic instead of paramagnetic. Basically, it means that when in the presence of electricity, it actually makes a repelling charge, whereas paramagnetic, like iron, will have an attractive charge. So
good to know.
Known item that works on them.
Okay.
But yeah, we can revisit that later if you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I considered, I guess, that they could have come from another dimension, but I thought it was more likely they lived in the cave systems.
I'm sure it's both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that
I'm
makes sense.
I'm sure something gets here and becomes persistent. So that would be an issue. I do not think they have a neurological and vascular system like a more standardized mammal would on this planet. And I also think some of the caniform and primeiform or dogman and Bigfoot would actually have a more standardized vascular system structure. But I think the crawler systems are very damage resistant, not normally functioning compared to what we deal with.
Yeah. I heard there have been a couple of I've collected so many stories. In about 3 or 4, there is some sort of indication where someone has some sort of access to knowledge that dogmen hunt crawlers.
There does seem to be, and I've not seen direct conflict between multiple OTNs. There is a well-known among those who encountered them that is an issue. That it seems like a lot of the other than normals don't really deal well with each other.
Right.
So there also seems to be a lot of subvariants and high genetic isolates, or at least just structural isolates among the caniform, whereas crawlers seem to have a very universal appearance regardless of where they are.
Right. I've looked for answers as far as like where they came from, and one of the answers I've gotten consistently from two that claim to be insiders, and then one woman who's a psychic, and they're all saying the same thing, that the crawlers were genetically modified and they are a mix between a gray alien, a human, and a reptilian. I don't know how true that is, but these people didn't know one another, and which wasn't the answer I wanted. It doesn't.
I don't have anything that would confirm that. It doesn't mean that that's not true. It's just I've never run across anything explained or experienced that would go hand in hand with that.
Right.
I do know the bodies are non-persistent after they stop functioning.
Tell me what you mean by that.
They sublimate very similarly to the creature we encountered up in Wechwiti, which was Snare at the time. So I do think a lot of the crawler evidence actually self-destructs, but not deliberately. I just don't think the matter can stay here intact. I mean, laws of conservation, if you come across weird, I don't think the matter can hold itself together after it ceases functioning. But I do know the fact that anybody who gets a hold of crawlers usually loses the body within 12 to 72 hours.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that it essentially just evaporates? Like it just it deconstructs as in it disappears?
It just sublimates off, and whether that sublimation goes into our atmosphere, the matter as actually converting back to where it came from or to a different place, I don't know.
Wow.
But I do know that crawlers are not persistent for more than 12 to 72 hours after death. Well, non-functioning would be a better term.
Wow. You're blowing my mind here. Okay, so I don't know if you can talk about this or if you have to wait, but like as far as the rifts and tell me how did you come to know about that? I mean, I would call them portal. In my mind, like one's like a highway and one's just a door. One will
Okay, yeah, I could see. To me, one would be a local bus system and the other would be an airplane. But I mean, it's just metaphors simile.
Right. Well, that's the only thing I have are metaphors, because I've never been able to get. Obviously, I haven't been able to get into like the actual science, which I'd love to. Tell me, if you can, how you came to know about what these things are. You called them rifts and what?
Rifts and shimmers. Well, I did a talk recently about an experience we had dealing with a large operation to shut down a rift, and I gained a lot of knowledge from that. Shimmers, I've been able to intuit myself, as well as on some tandem operations. I've gotten to talk to some of the technical leaders and people on that. And a lot of times are openly sharing information because we need to get the objective done. But most of the time, it just happened to be that our site, there does seem to be a high occurrence of other than normal entities right near a lot of the rare earth sites I work with at the time. And rare earth is the transuranics, so there's always uranium oxide and radioactivity associated with them, and we need those for every single bit of technology here, from all the medical equipment to the phones we're talking on now. Anything that's got a computer chip needs rare earth. More dependent on that than oil, actually. So we'd secure those sites, and there did seem to be a larger propensity for abnormal things to happen around them.
Would this have anything to do with Earth's ley lines?
You've got me there. I have no idea what that word structure means.
Okay, a ley line. Okay, it's points where.
Ley line.
Yeah.
Ley line. Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. Okay, I thought you said Ursa Leylon, and I was like, I have no idea what Ursa Leylon is.
That's just my southern. Sorry about that.
Yes, actually, I believe that might be. I believe there's a parallel with a lot of the geology and ley lines. I mean, it makes sense. The heat in our planet is actually due to radioactive decay, as well as a small fusion reaction running across the undersurface of the lithosphere. I mean, if we didn't have that going, then our planet would be a solid chunk of rock a long time ago, and our atmosphere would have blown off. The energy coming in from the sun to the quartz, and if you compress quartz, it makes electrical impulses, and if you put electricity into quartz, it vibrates. So yeah, we have a completely electrodynamic system just coursing through the entire earth, and you have giant fractures and cracks with different types of metalloids or conductive material. So yes, ley lines are very real, might be expressed as electromagnetic anomaly or as actually polar field distortions, but they're all the same word for the same concept. I just think people semantically idealize them differently.